The desert wind howled like a wounded animal, whipping sand across the cracked asphalt of Route 17, where the sun dipped low and painted the horizon in blood-red streaks. In the shadow of a rusted billboard advertising forgotten motels, a little girl no older than 7 huddled against the base of a weathered fence. Her dress, once white and frilly, was smeared with dirt and tears, her small hands clutching a frayed stuffed bear as if it were her only anchor to the world. She was alone, utterly alone, her wide eyes scanning the empty road with the terror of someone who knew what lurked in the gathering dusk. A distant rumble of thunder, or was it engines, echoed faintly, but she didn't notice, her sobs the only sound breaking the oppressive silence. This stretch of highway was no place for a child. Whispers in truck stops spoke of vanishings, of shadows that preyed on the vulnerable, and tonight she looked like easy prey. Ethan Ghost Harlan throttled down on his Harley, the beast of a bike growling in protest as he eased off the gas. He'd been riding solo for hours. The vibration of the engine, a familiar numbness against the ache in his chest, a scar that ran deeper than the jagged line across his jaw from that long-ago skirmish in the sands of some godforsaken war zone. At 42, Ethan was a ghost of a man. His leather cut patched with the faded emblem of the Iron Vipers, a club he'd walked away from years back after the promises he'd made turned to ash. The road was his confessor now, miles blurring the regrets, a wife lost to the bottle, a daughter vanished without trace 4 years prior. Lily, that was her name, etched into his soul like a tattoo he couldn't scrub off. He'd searched every back road from the Rockies to the Rio Grande, but leads dried up like desert rain. Tonight, he was just passing through, chasing the horizon to outrun the what-ifs. The girl's cry pierced the dusk like a shard of glass. Ethan killed the engine 100 yards out, his boots crunching gravel as he dismounted. The air smelled of creosote and exhaust, sharp against the metallic tang of fear. She flinched as his shadow fell over her, scrambling back until the fence dug into her spine. "Hey, kid," he said. Voice gravel rough from disuse, crouching low to seem less like the towering figure in chaps and chains. "You lost? What's your name?" Her eyes, framed by smudged cheeks, locked onto his, a stormy grey that hit him like a gut punch. She didn't answer, just hugged the bear tighter, her lower lip quivering. Up close, the signs were there, dirt-caked knees suggesting a long trek, a faint bruise blooming on her arm like an ugly flower. No parent in sight, no car idling nearby. Ethan's instincts, honed from bar fights and battlefield watches, screamed trouble. This wasn't abandonment. This was something darker, a thread in the web of human ugliness that snaked through these forgotten highways. He shrugged off his jacket, draping it over her shoulders against the chill creeping in. The leather dwarfed her, but she didn't shrug it away. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he murmured, scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. Headlights, dust trails, anything, nothing but the vast emptiness. In his saddlebag, he pulled a water bottle and a protein bar, offering them like peace flags. She hesitated, then snatched the bar, tearing into it with the hunger of days without. As she ate, her gaze drifted to his face, lingering on the scar that twisted from temple to chin, a silvery reminder of shrapnel and survival. Ethan's hand instinctively touched it, the raised tissue rough under his calluses. "Old war story," he said with a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Doesn't bite." The girl swallowed, her voice a whisper carried on the wind. "My daddy, he had one just like that." Time fractured. Ethan's world narrowed to her words, the desert fading to a roar in his ears. He stared, breath catching like a hook in his throat. Lily's face flashed in his mind, those same grey eyes, the dimple in her left cheek hidden now under grime. 4 years. Posters yellowed on diner walls, calls to detectives gone cold. He'd buried the hope under layers of whiskey and wheel, convinced she'd been taken by the night, her small hand slipping from his forever. But here, in this forsaken spot, a child with echoes of her voice spoke of a scar matching his own. She reached out then, tentative fingers brushing the mark on his jaw. The touch was electric, innocent and devastating, sending a tremor through his iron frame. "He promised he'd come back," she said, her voice cracking, "but he never did." Ethan's vision blurred, hot tears carving paths down his weathered cheeks. He didn't fight them. For the first time in years, the dam broke. Kneeling fully now, he gathered her into his arms, the bear squished between them, her small frame shaking against his chest. The scent of her, faint shampoo under the dirt like wildflowers after rain, confirmed what his heart had screamed. It was her, Lily, alive, stolen, hidden, but here. The promise he'd made on the day she was born whispered over her crib as war loomed. "I'll always find you, no matter the miles." It surged back, alive and demanding fulfillment. As the first stars pricked the sky, Ethan held her. The roads hummed, distant now. But danger lingered. He could feel it in the prickle at his neck, the way her body tensed at unseen sounds. Whoever had taken her, traffickers, grudges from his past, wouldn't let go easy. The Iron Vipers, his chosen family scattered but loyal, would rally if he called. This wasn't just reunion. It was war, a reckoning for the lost years. He wiped his face, steeling his resolve, and lifted her onto the bike's passenger seat. "Hold on tight, kiddo," he said, voice steady now. "Daddy's keeping that promise." The engine roared to life, a thunderous vow against the night, carrying father and daughter into the unknown. But shadows followed, and the real storm was just beginning. In the rearview, the billboard loomed like a sentinel. Its faded words, a prophecy: "Find your way home." Ethan gunned the throttle, the wind tearing at them, but for the first time, home wasn't a memory. It was right here, fragile and fierce. The road ahead twisted toward redemption, where old scars would bind instead of break, and justice would ride on the wings of unbreakable loyalty. The engine's roar swallowed the desert night, a primal bellow that echoed off the canyon walls like a challenge to the stars. Ethan gripped the handlebars, his knuckles white against the worn leather, while Lily clung to his waist, her small arms locked in a vice of trust and fear. The Harley surged forward, headlights slicing through the inky blackness of Route 17, illuminating twisted scrub, and the occasional glint of coyote eyes in the brush. The wind whipped at them, carrying the sharp bite of sage and the faint, acrid whisper of distant rain that never fell. Behind them, the horizon remained empty, but Ethan's gut twisted with the certainty of pursuit, shadows that didn't belong to the night, but to men who'd profited from her absence. Lily's cheek pressed against his back, her breath warm and ragged through his shirt. "Daddy." The word was muffled, tentative, as if testing the air for truth. Ethan swallowed hard, the scar on his jaw throbbing like a fresh wound under the rush of adrenaline. 4 years of silence, of empty cribs and faded photos pinned to his tank bag, had carved him hollow. He'd ridden through ghost towns and border crossings, chasing whispers of a girl with grey eyes and a laugh like wind chimes. The club had offered help once, back when the Iron Vipers were his brothers in arms, forged in the fires of desert ops and barroom oaths. But he'd pushed them away, convinced his failures were his alone to bear. Now, with her alive and trembling against him, that old promise ignited: protect her no matter the cost. "Yeah, kiddo," he called over the engine's growl. "It's me. We're going home." The road curved sharply, dipping into a shallow valley where the air grew thicker, laced with the metallic tang of an approaching storm. Ethan's mind raced faster than the bike. How had she ended up there, alone by that fence? The bruise on her arm, the dirt under her nails, spoke of flight, not accident. Memories clawed at him, the night she vanished from their rundown trailer on the outskirts of Reno, the door ajar, her favorite bear missing from the bed. Cops had called it a runaway case, but Ethan knew better. Debts from his riding days, enemies from the club's shadier runs, had a way of circling back. He'd buried his wife after the grief took her, then buried himself in the miles. But Lily's touch on his scar had shattered the grave. A low rumble built in the distance, not thunder, but engines, multiple, hungry. Ethan glanced in the side mirror, catching the faint glow of taillights cresting the rise behind them. 3 bikes, maybe 4, their riders hunched low like predators scenting blood. His pulse hammered, a war drum from battles long past. He twisted the throttle, the Harley leaping forward with a snarl, but the road narrowed here, flanked by sheer rock faces that funneled sound and shadow. Lily whimpered, her grip tightening. "They're coming, Daddy, the bad men. They said you'd never find me." Her words hit like shrapnel. Bad men. The phrase conjured faces from his nightmares, slick operators in cheap suits, running girls and ghosts through the underbelly of the Southwest. Had they taken her for leverage, a twisted payment for old sins? Ethan's jaw clenched, the wind stinging his eyes. He couldn't outrun them forever. This stretch led to a bottleneck at the old iron bridge, a rusted relic spanning a dry riverbed. There, the chase would turn to confrontation. His free hand patted her arm, a silent vow. "Hold on, I've got you." As they crested the valley's edge, the bridge loomed ahead, its silhouette jagged against the moonlit sky. The pursuing bikes closed in, their headlights blooming like malevolent eyes. Ethan downshifted, the engine protesting as he scanned for options, a side trail snaking into the scrub, barely wide enough for the Harley. No choice. He veered hard, tires kicking up gravel that pinged like bullets off the frame. Lily buried her face in his back, her stuffed bear wedged between them, its button eyes staring blankly into the chaos. The lead pursuer, a burly figure on a chopped Sportster, pulled alongside, his face obscured by a bandana, but the glint of a chain necklace caught the light. Ethan's old rival, Jack's razor thorn, from the splintered remnants of a rival crew, the Black Rattlers. The man gestured wildly, shouting over the din, words lost to the wind but laced with threat. Ethan swerved closer, feinting a ram, forcing the bike to peel away. Adrenaline surged, sharpening every sense. The burn of rubber, the acrid smoke from overheating brakes, the child's heartbeat thudding against his spine. They hit the side trail at speed, branches clawing at their legs like skeletal hands. The Harley bucked over ruts, but Ethan held the line, the path opening into a hidden arroyo where boulders offered cover. He killed the engine, the sudden silence deafening, broken only by Lily's soft sobs and the distant growl of engines searching. Dismounting, he pulled her down, cradling her against a rock outcrop. The air here was cooler, scented with damp earth and creosote, a brief sanctuary. "Shh," he whispered, scanning the rim above. "We're safe for now." Lily looked up, her grey eyes mirroring his own turmoil. "They took me because of you. Said you owed them." The confession hung heavy, a thread unraveling the past. Ethan knelt, brushing dirt from her cheek, the touch grounding him. Owed them. Yeah, from a botched run years back, when club loyalty had blurred into desperation. He'd walked away to protect his family, but the shadows had followed. "I know, baby, and I'm fixing it. Promised you I'd always come back. Remember that." She nodded, a spark of recognition lighting her face. The scar on his jaw, the one she'd touched, was their secret code, inked in her memory from bedtime stories of his hero marks. Footsteps crunched above, boots on loose shale. Ethan tensed, drawing a compact pistol from his boot, a relic from his Viper days, not for killing, but for warning. He pressed Lily behind him, her hand clutching his shirt. The first pursuer crested the edge, silhouette broad and menacing. "Harlan!" the voice barked, rough as sandpaper. "You think you can just take what's ours?" Not Jack's, worse, a hired gun, face scarred by his own regrets. Ethan's voice cut the night, steady and unyielding. "She's my blood. You touch her, You answer to more than me." A standoff stretched, the man's hand hovering near his waistband, eyes flicking to the girl, tension coiled like a spring, the desert holding its breath. Then a new sound, deeper, multiplied. Engines but familiar, a convoy's thunder rolling from the east, the Iron Vipers. Ethan had left a burner phone message at the last gas station, a coded call. Ghost needs the pack. Loyalty, that unbreakable chain, answered. Headlights pierced the arroyo, a wall of chrome and leather descending like avengers. The pursuer faltered, backing away as the first Viper bike skidded to a halt. Marcus Iron Hale, Ethan's old sergeant from the sands, dismounted, his frame a mountain in black denim. "You called, brother?" The words were simple, but they carried the weight of oaths sworn under fire. The hired gun bolted, vanishing into the scrub as more Vipers fanned out, engines idling like watchful guardians. Ethan exhaled, pulling Lily close as Marcus approached. The reunion was wordless at first, a nod, a clasp of forearms scarred by the same wars. She's back," Ethan managed, voice cracking. Marcus's eyes softened, landing on the girl. "We ride for family, Ghost, always." Lily peeked out, curiosity edging fear as the club formed a protective circle. The night air hummed with possibility, the promise of reckoning dawn. But as the Vipers revved to life, scouting for more threats, Ethan felt the weight settle deeper. This was no end. It was the spark. The men who'd taken her lurked in the shadows of corrupt towns, shielded by badges and bribes. Justice wouldn't come easy. It demanded truth, loyalty, the slow burn of honor against the dark. With Lily safe in Marcus's spare jacket, Ethan mounted up, the convoy stretching into the distance like a steel river. The road ahead whispered of trials, but for the first time he wasn't riding alone. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The convoy thundered through the pre-dawn haze, a phalanx of Harleys cutting the chill like knives through silk. Ethan rode point, Lily's small form bundled against him, her head nodding with exhaustion on his shoulder. The Iron Vipers flanked them in a loose V formation, engines harmonizing in a low, protective growl that drowned out the whisper of wind through the mesquite. Marcus rode shotgun on Ethan's right, his massive frame a reassuring bulk, eyes scanning the rear like a hawk on the hunt. The air carried the mingled scents of hot metal, leather polish, and the faint, earthy promise of rain that teased but never delivered in these parts. Behind them, the arroyo's shadows receded, but the tension lingered, a taut wire humming beneath the roar. They pushed hard for the old Viper safe house, a weathered ranch tucked into the folds of the Badlands, miles from prying eyes. It was a relic from club days, fortified with chain link and floodlights, where brothers had patched wounds and plotted against the world's sharper edges. Ethan felt the weight of Lily's trust pressing into him. Her fingers curled into his vest like roots seeking soil. 4 years. She'd been just 3 when the world ripped her away. Now at 7, she carried ghosts in her gaze, questions that clawed at the quiet moments between revs. "Daddy," she murmured as the bike slowed on a gravel approach, her voice thin as the first light creeping over the ridges. "They said you forgot me." The words landed like a boot to the ribs. Ethan eased the Harley to a stop, the engine ticking down to silence as the others pulled in behind. He dismounted carefully, lifting her off with arms that trembled not from fatigue, but from the raw ache of truth. Forgot her? Every mile since that night had been a pilgrimage to her memory, a penance for the debts that had drawn the wolves to their door. He knelt to her level, the gravel biting into his knees, and cupped her face, thumbs brushing away the last smudges of road dust. Her skin was soft, unmarked now except for that fading bruise, a map of survival. "Never, Lily," Not for a second. I chased every shadow looking for you." His voice cracked, the scar on his jaw pulling tight as emotion surged. Marcus approached, his boots crunching softly, a thermos of black coffee in hand, strong as bunker fuel, the kind that kept sentries sharp through endless nights. He handed it over without a word, then crouched beside them, his own face a lattice of lines from sandstorms and regrets. "Little one's tough," he said, voice like rumbling gravel. "Like her old man." Lily eyed him warily, clutching her bear, but the warmth in his tone eased her shoulders. The Vipers dismounted in a loose circle, checking weapons and perimeters with the quiet efficiency of men who danced with death before dawn. No one spoke of the past yet. That would come inside, by the fire. The safe-house door creaked open on rusted hinges, revealing a main room lit by a single bulb swinging like a pendulum. Dust motes danced in the beam, settling on scarred wooden tables laden with maps and half-empty bottles from forgotten stakeouts. Ethan carried Lily to a sagging couch piled with blankets, settling her like fragile cargo. She sank into the folds, eyes heavy but flickering with the need to unburden. The others filtered in. Jax, Forge, Riley, the club's mechanic with grease-blackened hands. Lena Sparrow Torres, a sharp-eyed nurse who'd patched more than one brother after border skirmishes, and a handful more, faces etched with the loyalty that time couldn't erode. They formed a semicircle, not crowding but present, a wall against the night. As coffee steamed and shadows pooled in the corners, Lily's story spilled out in fragments, pieced together like a puzzle from hell. She'd been taken from the trailer park playground, bundled into a van by men with hard eyes and harder demands. "They wanted you to pay back what you owed," she whispered, hugging her knees, the bear's fur matted against her cheek. "Kept me in a big house by the river with locks on the doors, said if you came they'd hurt us both." Ethan's fists clenched, knuckles whitening. The river had to be the outskirts of Tucson, where whispers of a trafficking ring hid behind legitimate fronts, trucking firms, motels with no-questions policies. His old run with the Vipers had gone south there, a shipment of goods that turned out dirtier than promised. He'd bailed to shield his family, but the Rattlers hadn't forgotten. They'd used Lily as collateral, a living debt. Marcus leaned forward, his presence a steady anchor. "Names, kid. Any you remember?" Lily shook her head, but described flashes. A man with a snake tattoo curling up his neck, another with a voice like cracking ice, barking orders in smoke-filled rooms. The Vipers exchanged glances, the air thickening with recognition. "Sounds like Victor Slade's crew," Forge muttered, tracing a finger over a faded map. "Slade's got ties to crooked badges down south, runs girls and ghosts through the interstate. We crossed him years back." "Ghost, after you ghosted out." Ethan nodded, the pieces slotting into place. His exit from the club had left loose ends, promises half-kept that festered into vendettas. But redemption wasn't a solo ride. It was this. These men and women, bound by scars and oaths, stepping up when the road turned treacherous. Lena knelt by Lily, checking her over with gentle hands, applying salve to the bruise that bloomed like a secret shame. "You're safe now, Mika," she said, her voice a soft cadence against the room's tension. Lily reached for Ethan's hand, her fingers tracing the scar again, a ritual of reconnection. "You promised," she said, eyes locking on his. "In the stories, before the bad dreams, you'd fight the monsters." Ethan pulled her close, the scent of her hair, faint vanilla under the desert grit, stirring memories of bedtime whispers. "And I will. We all will." The room murmured agreement, a chorus of resolve. Outside, the first light gilded the horizon, turning the Badlands to gold, but inside, plans brewed like storm clouds. As the group mapped routes, backroads to evade checkpoints, allies in neutral towns, Ethan felt the old fire reignite. This wasn't just rescue, it was reckoning. Slade's web stretched far, corrupting the very veins of justice, sheriffs on payroll, files buried in bureaucratic graves. But the Vipers had their own code, forged in the crucible of war and wanderlust. Loyalty wasn't a chain, it was wings. Marcus clapped Ethan's shoulder, a silent vow passing between them. "We end this clean, brother, for her, for the promise." Lily drifted off then, lulled by the low voices and the crackle of a radio scanning frequencies. Ethan watched her sleep, the rise and fall of her chest, a miracle he'd nearly lost. The scar on his jaw itched, a reminder that pain had led him here, to this fragile family, chosen in the fires of loss. But as scouts reported movement on the wire, Slade's men sniffing the trail, the peace shattered. Engines revved outside, not foes, but a signal, time to move. Ethan lifted Lily, her weight a sacred burden, and stepped into the light. The convoy reformed, a steel heartbeat against the dawn. The road to justice twisted ahead, laced with moral thorns, but with brothers at his back. Ethan's promise burned brighter than fear. Redemption rode with them, silent and unyielding, toward the heart of the storm. The sun climbed higher, bleaching the Badlands to a merciless white as the Iron Viper's convoy snaked through forgotten trails, dust plumes trailing like war banners in their wake. Ethan rode steady at the fore, Lily's slight weight a constant anchor against his back, her arms wrapped around him with the quiet ferocity of a survivor reclaiming her place. The air thrummed with the symphony of engines. Deep bass rumbles from the heavies, sharper whines from the scouts fanning out ahead, mingling with the dry rasp of wind-scoured rock. Marcus flanked left, his bike a growling sentinel, while Lena brought up the rear with medical gear strapped tight, her eyes sharp for any sign of falter in the pack. They'd left the safe house under a veil of false trails, doubling back through arroyos to shake any tails, but the weight of pursuit hung heavy, an invisible noose tightening with every mile toward Tucson. Lily stirred against him, her voice a fragile thread over the din. "Where are we going, Daddy? To the river house?" The question pierced him, stirring the embers of rage he'd banked for her sake. Ethan glanced over his shoulder, catching her grey eyes, wide with the remnants of captivity's fear. "Not there, kiddo. We're going to make sure those shadows can't touch you again." He didn't elaborate. The plan was etched in the Viper's silent nods back at the ranch. Hit Slade's operation at its fringes, a nondescript warehouse on the city's edge, where trucks loaded more than freight under cover of night. No guns blazing, that was the code. Truth first, leverage from the inside, exposing the rot that shielded Slade's empire. Ethan's old contacts in the club had dug up ledgers, whispers of payoffs to local enforcers masquerading as law. It was a moral tightrope, balancing vengeance with the honor that defined them. The trail spat them onto a cracked service road paralleling the interstate, where semis thundered past like indifferent giants. Marcus signaled a pull-off into a shaded overhang of sheer cliffs, the convoy halting in a tight cluster. Engines ticked cool as the riders dismounted, forming a huddle amid the scent of cooling oil and sun-baked stone. Forge unrolled a battered map on his tank, grease-stained fingers tracing veins of access routes. Slade's got eyes everywhere, cameras on the fences, guards with badges that don't shine right. We slip in at dusk, grab what we need, records, proof of the kids they've moved. His voice was steady, but his eyes flicked to Lily, now perched on a rock with Lena, sharing a granola bar. The girl nibbled slowly, her bear propped beside her like a silent witness. Ethan crouched by the map, the scar on his jaw catching the light, a silvery testament to battles that had forged him. 4 years ago, he'd walked from the Vipers to cut ties with the darkness, promising Lily a clean life away from the club's shadows. But debts lingered like bad blood, Slade twisting them into chains that bound his daughter. "No risks," he said, voice low and edged with steel. "We get in. Document the lies, get out. Then we ride to the ones who wear the stars, show them what real justice looks like." Marcus nodded, his massive hand clapping Ethan's shoulder, the gesture heavy with unspoken history. They'd served together in the endless dunes, where promises were sealed in sweat and sand, brothers emerging from the fire not by blood, but by choice. "For the pack," Marcus rumbled, "and the little one." As the sun arced toward afternoon, scouts returned with grim reports. Slade's men were mobilizing, radio chatter crackling about a lost asset spotted near the Badlands. The air grew thicker, laced with the faint ozone of tension, as if the desert itself sensed the storm brewing. Lily wandered closer, her small hand slipping into Ethan's, fingers tracing the familiar ridge of his scar absent-mindedly. "You fought monsters before," she said. Not a question, but a spark of the stories he'd told her in quieter times, tales of heroes who kept their word against the odds. Ethan knelt, pulling her into a half-embrace, the leather of his cut creaking softly. "Still do, baby, but this time it's with help." He glanced at the Vipers, their faces a mosaic of resolve. Forge wiping his brow, Lena checking her kit, others murmuring plans in low tones. Family, chosen in the crucible of loss, standing unyielding. Dusk painted the warehouse district in bruised purples. The convoy ghosting in, under cover of overgrown lots and chain-link shadows. They split into pairs, Ethan with Marcus, moving like wraiths through the periphery. The building loomed, a squat fortress of corrugated metal, its loading bays yawning dark and empty, save for the hum of generators. The air reeked of diesel and something sharper, fear, perhaps, or the stale echo of confined lives. Ethan scaled a fence with practiced ease, his boots silent on the gravel, heart pounding a rhythm of restrained fury. Inside, through a side vent pried open by Forge's tools, they navigated dim corridors, lit by flickering fluorescence, the walls scarred with graffiti like war wounds. Voices echoed from an office ahead, harsh, clipped, discussing shipments and debts settled. Ethan peered through a cracked door, spotting a desk piled with files, a computer screen glowing with ledgers. Marcus covered him as he slipped in, snapping photos with a concealed camera, each click a quiet thunder against the corruption. Names, dates, routes, proof of the web that had ensnared Lily and others, bribes to officials who turned blind eyes. But as Ethan rifled a drawer, pulling a folder marked "Collateral," footsteps approached. He froze, the paper crinkling like a betrayer's whisper. The door swung open, revealing a guard, stocky, with the snake tattoo curling from his collar, eyes narrowing in recognition. "Harlan!" he snarled, hand dropping to his sidearm. Time splintered. Marcus lunged from the shadows, tackling the man in a blur of muscle and muffled grunts, the scuffle a contained storm of fists and restraint. No shots. The code held. Ethan backed toward the exit, folder clutched tight, adrenaline surging like fire in his veins. "We got what we need," he hissed, helping Marcus pin the guard with zip ties scavenged from the toolkit. The man's curses faded as they melted back into the night. Alarms silent for now, but the clock ticking. Outside, the Vipers reconvened in the gloom, engines whispering to life as they peeled away. Lily waited with Lena in a hidden vantage, her face lighting at Ethan's return. He scooped her up, the folder a heavy secret against his chest. "It's starting, kiddo. The truth's our weapon." The convoy roared south, toward a neutral ally, a retired judge with a nose for injustice, far from Slade's reach. But in the mirrors, headlights flickered, pursuit closing like jaws. Ethan's promise burned fiercer, not just survival, but redemption, carving justice from the moral grey, where honor alone could light the way. If this story is stirring something in you, hit that like button. It helps these tales of loyalty and comeback reach more hearts in the shadows. Word count 872. The night deepened into a velvet shroud as the Iron Viper's convoy barreled south along the winding backroads, the engine's chorus a defiant hymn against the encroaching dark. Ethan leaned into the curves, the Harley's frame vibrating through his bones like a second heartbeat. Lily's warmth pressed firm against his back, a living talisman warding off the chill that seeped from the desert floor. The folder of stolen documents was strapped tight in his saddlebag, its weight a promise of upheaval. Pages heavy with the ink of corruption. Ledgers detailing bribes to sheriffs, routes marked for hidden transports, names of officials who'd traded oaths for envelopes of cash. The air whipped past, sharp with the tang of creosote and exhaust, carrying the faint metallic whisper of thunderheads massing on the horizon. Marcus rode close on the left, his bulk a steady shadow, while scouts peeled off intermittently to check flanks, their taillights flickering like fireflies in the void. Lily shifted, her voice cutting through the roar like a fragile bell. "Daddy, are they still following?" Ethan felt her small hands tighten on his vest, fingers brushing the edge of his scar in that instinctive ritual, grounding them both amid the chaos. He glanced in the rear view, where distant headlights bobbed like predatory eyes, closing the gap with relentless purpose. Slade's crew, emboldened by the warehouse breach no doubt, had picked up their trail. Vans and bikes weaving through the interstate shadows. "They're trying, kiddo," he replied, his tone steady as forged steel, masking the storm brewing in his chest. 4 years of hollow searches had taught him patience, but this chase ignited the old fire. The unyielding vow to shield her, to dismantle the web that had stolen her light. But we ride smarter. The Vipers have our 6. The road dipped into a narrow pass, flanked by jagged outcrops that clawed at the sky, funneling the convoy into a gauntlet of stone and scrub. Marcus signaled ahead, pulling the pack into a tighter formation, engines downshifting to a predatory purr. The pursuing lights multiplied, 5 now, then 7, engines snarling as they pushed harder, dust clouds billowing in their wake like vengeful spirits. Ethan's mind raced, piecing the moral calculus. Confrontation meant risk to Lily, to the brothers who'd answered his call without question. But evasion alone wouldn't end this. Slade's rot festered in the system's veins, shielded by men in uniforms who'd forgotten their badge's weight. The retired judge, Elias Grant, waited in a quiet border town, an old Viper ally from Ethan's early days, a man who'd traded the bench for a cabin after seeing too much injustice twist the scales. Grant could funnel the evidence to federal eyes, untainted hands that might finally bring the hammer down. A sharp crack echoed, not thunder but a gunshot, wild and warning, pinging off a roadside boulder. Lily gasped, burrowing closer, her bear wedged forgotten in the saddle's pouch. Adrenaline surged through Ethan, sharpening the world to edges, the burn of rubber on asphalt, the acrid bite of gunpowder drifting on the wind. Marcus's shout lost to the din but clear in intent, split and evade. The convoy fractured strategically, half veering onto a rutted fire trail that snaked upward into the hills. The rest, including Ethan, holding the main path to draw fire. Forge took point now, his modified chopper leading the feint, exhaust popping like gunfire to mask their moves. "Stay low!" Ethan barked over his shoulder, one hand steadying Lily as he throttled harder, the Harley leaping forward with a bellow that shook loose pebbles from the cliffs. The pass widened into a flat stretch, moonlight silvering the cracked earth like a battlefield from his war-torn memories. The lead pursuer, a blacked-out van with reinforced sides, surged alongside, its side door sliding open to reveal shadowed figures, one leveling a shotgun that gleamed dully. Ethan's instincts kicked in, honed from dunes where survival meant split-second choices. He swerved sharply, forcing the van to brake, tires screeching in protest as it fishtailed. Marcus matched the move on the other flank, his bike clipping a side mirror with a metallic crunch, buying precious seconds. No shots returned. The Viper's code held firm. Defend, don't destroy. Let truth be the blade. But the moral weight pressed. These men weren't just thugs. Some wore the veneer of authority, deputies bought with Slade's dirty money, and their betrayal a deeper wound to the justice Ethan had once believed in. Lily's whisper pierced the frenzy. "I remember him, the one in the van. He locked the doors at the river house." Her words fueled the rage, a father's fury tempered by the promise he'd made over her crib. Protect without becoming the monster. Ethan nodded grimly, eyes locked on the road as the van recovered, accelerating with a roar. Up ahead, the fire trail reconverged, Forge's group looping back in a haze of dust, their bikes forming a rolling barricade. Lena's voice crackled over the encrypted radio clipped to his belt. "Clear ahead. Grant's place is 10 miles. Hold the line." The Vipers closed ranks, a wall of chrome and leather, engines revving in unison to intimidate. The van hesitated, then veered off onto a side spur, its lights vanishing into the brush as if swallowed by the night. The bikes pursued briefly, ensuring no immediate tail, before reforming the convoy. As the adrenaline ebbed, the road smoothed into open plains, stars wheeling overhead like witnesses to their odyssey. Ethan eased the throttle, letting Lily's breathing steady against him, her fingers still tracing his scar, a touch that bridged the lost years, mending fractures with silent loyalty. Marcus pulled abreast, his face etched with the quiet satisfaction of battles won without blood. "Close one, Ghost, but we kept it clean." Ethan met his gaze, the bond between them a thread woven from shared sands and unbreakable oaths. The club wasn't just riders. They were the family Lily deserved, chosen in the forge of hardship, standing where blood had failed. "For her," Ethan said simply, the words carrying the weight of redemption's dawn. They crested a rise, the border town's faint glow flickering on the horizon, a cluster of low buildings huddled against the wind, Grant's cabin a sentinel on its edge. The air softened here, laced with the subtle scent of pine from distant hills, a promise of shelter after the storm. But as they neared, radio static broke the calm, scout chatter of roadblocks ahead, Slade's influence stretching even this far, badges flashing in the dark. Ethan's jaw tightened, the scar pulling like a reminder of costs yet unpaid. This wasn't evasion anymore. It was the precipice of true reckoning, where loyalty would test the boundaries of justice, and one father's promise could shatter an empire built on lies. The convoy slowed, engines idling like coiled springs, ready to ride into the heart of the fray. Lily lifted her head, grey eyes meeting his in the mirror, a spark of unyielding trust. The night held its breath, the road ahead a gauntlet of shadows and salvation. The border town's lights flickered like hesitant stars against the encroaching night, a sparse grid of sodium glow outlining clappered shacks and a single main drag lined with faded diners. The Iron Viper's convoy eased to a halt on the outskirts, engines cutting to a low rumble that settled into the cool air like a held breath. Ethan dismounted first, his boots sinking into the soft gravel shoulder, the scent of damp sage rising from recent sprinkles that had softened the dust. Lily slid down after him, her small hand finding his immediately, fingers intertwining with a grip that spoke of reclaimed security. The folder in his saddlebag felt like a loaded revolver, evidence that could topple Slade's house of cards, but only if they reached Grant intact. Marcus killed his bike beside them, the massive frame creaking as he swung off, his eyes scanning the roadblock ahead. Two squad cars idling across the lane, their blue lights pulsing lazily, casting erratic shadows on the deputies leaning against hoods, cigarettes glowing like embers. "Slade's strings pull long," Marcus muttered, voice a low thunder, as the Vipers formed a loose perimeter, hands near holsters but not drawing. The air hummed with tension, laced with the faint ozone of distant lightning and the sharper tang of unwashed uniforms. Ethan nodded, pulling Lily close, her head tucking under his arm, as if to shield her from the world's sharper edges. 4 years of absence had etched lines into his face, deeper than his scar. But holding her now reignited the core promise. Not just survival, but a life untainted by the shadows he'd once navigated. The deputies straightened as the convoy's presence registered, one flicking his smoke away, hand drifting to his radio. "Evening, folks," he called, tone oily with false authority. "Roads closed, official business." Ethan stepped forward, the gravel crunching under his weight, his leather cut whispering against the night breeze. No bluster. The Viper's way was measured, honor guiding the blade. "We're just passing through to see a friend, Elias Grant. Tell him Ghost is here." The name hung in the air, a key turning in rusted locks. The deputy's eyes narrowed, recognition flickering. Grant's reputation as a thorn in corrupt sides preceded him, even in these fringes. Whispers crackled over the radio, static laced with urgency, as the man conferred with his partner. Lily peeked out, her grey eyes wide but steady, the stuffed bear peeking from her pocket like a talisman. "Daddy," she whispered. "They look like the ones from the house." Ethan's jaw tightened, the scar throbbing with suppressed fury, but he squeezed her hand gently. "Not anymore. Truth changes everything." Moments stretched like taffy, the deputy's postures shifting from blockade to uneasy retreat. Grant's influence, it seemed, still carried weight, old alliances forged in courtrooms where justice hadn't fully bent. The cars pulled aside, barriers parting with a reluctant scrape of tires on asphalt. Marcus exhaled slowly, clapping Ethan's shoulder as the convoy rolled through, engines purring softly now, a procession of quiet resolve. The cabin loomed at the town's edge, a sturdy log structure bathed in porchlight, smoke curling from the chimney like an invitation. Elias Grant waited on the steps, a wiry man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses and a face mapped by decades of verdicts. He'd traded the robe for flannel, but his eyes still held the scalpel sharpness of one who'd dissected lies for a living. "Ghost," Grant said, rising to clasp forearms, his grip firm despite the years. "Heard you rode in hot. Come inside. Let's see what you've brought." The interior was warm, lit by a stone hearth, where flames danced shadows across bookshelves, groaning with legal tomes and faded photos of oaths taken under better skies. Lily settled on a rug by the fire, Lena hovering nearby with a mug of cocoa, the steam carrying hints of chocolate and cinnamon, a small mercy in the storm. The Vipers gathered around a scarred oak table, Forge spreading the folder's contents like cards in a high-stakes game, printed ledgers, photos of manifests, notes on payoffs that named names, deputies, councilmen, even a judge who'd looked the other way for a cut of Slade's shadows. Grant pored over them, his face hardening with each page, the firelight catching the lines of quiet outrage. "This is airtight," he murmured, a voice steady as a gavel. "Trafficking veiled as transport, kids like your girl used as leverage. I've got channels, federal investigators who've been circling Slade for months, waiting for the thread to pull." Ethan leaned forward, the weight of the past pressing like an unseen hand. He'd walked from the club to escape this darkness, promising Lily a horizon free of debts. But loyalty had drawn him back, not as a curse, but a redemption. "They took her because of me," he said, voice rough with the admission. "Old run's gone wrong. I thought cutting ties would end it." Grant met his gaze, nodding. "And it nearly did. But you came back. That's the measure of a man, keeping the word when the miles try to bury it." As dawn's first light filtered through the windows, turning the room to gold, Grant made calls, discreet lines to DC, voices on the other end snapping to attention at the evidence's promise. The Vipers listened in silence, a circle of scarred guardians, their presence a testament to family forged in fire. Marcus with his unyielding frame, Forge tinkering with a radio absent-mindedly, Lena murmuring stories to Lily of strong women who'd ridden through worse. The girl laughed softly at one, the sound a balm, her fingers absently tracing Ethan's scar as he held her on his knee. "You kept it, Daddy," she said, eyes bright with the dawn. "The promise." He pulled her close, the scent of her hair mingling with wood smoke, tears pricking unbidden. Redemption wasn't a blaze. It was this quiet mending, scars binding rather than breaking. By mid-morning the machine stirred, warrants issued from afar, raids coordinated on Slade's warehouses, the snake-tattooed guards and their bought-in forces rounded up in a cascade of flashing lights and clanging cuffs. News trickled in over Grant's scanner, Slade himself, holed up in a riverside mansion, led away in chains. His empire crumbling under the weight of exposed truth. No blood on viper hands, justice came through the light of day, moral and unyielding, the kind that honored the vulnerable. Ethan watched Lily play in the yard, chasing fireflies that lingered from the night, her laughter free and unshadowed. The club prepared to ride out, but not alone. Grant joined for the send-off. A nod of alliance renewed. As the engines fired up, Ethan lifted Lily onto the Harley, her bear strapped secure. "Home now?" she asked, the word tentative but hopeful. He smiled, the scar softening in the sunlight. "Yeah, kiddo, real home." The convoy thundered away, a river of chrome cutting toward new horizons, the Badlands receding like old ghosts. Promises kept, loyalty unbroken. They'd carved justice from the grey, leaving a legacy of quiet courage. In the rear view, the town shrank, but the light they'd ignited spread, a beacon for the lost. Thank you for riding this journey with us. Tales of unbreakable bonds and moral fire. If these stories touch your soul, hit subscribe and join the pack. More confessions from the road await.